Hello and welcome to the latest episode of the PCT podcast. On today's episode, we have UEFA A licence coach Ash Civil. Ash joins us from Iceland at the present and is going to speak to us about his career to date and also his development as a coach. So, good evening, Ash. How are you today?
Evening. Yeah, I'm good. Thanks. Currently thawing out after training, but yeah, it's a pleasure to be here.
Fantastic, buddy. Thank you for taking the time to speak to us. I know, having spoke to you before we came online, that you've been pretty busy today. Just how much has obviously the COVID situation affected you and your role?
As everyone, it's affected it massively. I do think it's probably going to help it in the long term. If I'm here or in a similar situation again, I've learned from it a lot. The club here, we're a little bit different to a lot of clubs in Iceland. Some of our players out of the summer season, they're based in Reykjavik, they're based in Akureyri, they're based in different towns. They're either at school or work. So in future, I can use some of the things that we've had to do over the last 8 weeks from the off, and actually have that better connection earlier. So that's been quite positive to uncover things like Strava, Zoom, to find out about them and start implementing them. If I'm in a similar situation in the future, I know I've got them already in the locker.
Fantastic. So for those that aren't aware, can you just give us a little bit of info on your background, qualifications wise and current roles?
Yeah, so currently I'm head coach of a team in the third division in Iceland. We are a small town on the east coast, and we've got currently 14 local boys. So we're a small town, but we've still got a lot of local boys in the side, and we had that with a few foreigners. I'm an A licensed coach. Don't really talk about that side of it much, but was one of those people that wanted to go through the badges and improve my knowledge base, and was fortunate enough to get on the A license at a good time, with the new format, as it had just started, and had a very good coach educator in Craig Hinton who came and helped me there. So that's the background of where I'm at the moment, but that's where I am now. It's been a 12-year journey, I'd say, starting from level 1 to get to here.
Okay. So obviously I've been fortunate enough to know you for a few years now through the coach mentor scheme. And I've always enjoyed listening to you speak when we have a chat and the experiences you've had. I just wanted to go over sort of your coaching career to date and then onto your development as a coach. So let's start way back when. When did you first get into coaching?
There's kind of, I would say my first coaching session I would have been 18, but I did my level 1 at 16. But that was very much did the course with other guys that I was playing with, and that was it. Didn't actually do any sessions. And then when I was kind of when I was looking for a job, I was fortunate enough to get a few hours coaching, just after school clubs it started off at. And I reckon session number maybe 2 or 3, I'm on my own. First kind of session that I've had on my own, and a parent's come up to me afterwards and is complaining about their kid being left out of the session, and I'm like 18, like just bump like a deer in headlights. Yeah. And that was kind of that first real experience when I went, oh, I need to take this a little bit more seriously if I want to keep progressing. And then from there, that's what I did. Still played, but started to take the coaching side of it seriously, and didn't want that experience to happen again, where I was kind of caught almost blindsided, didn't really expect it, didn't know how to deal with it. But yeah, that was that early start.
Can you remember your first ever session? It's something I like to ask coaches we have on.
That's the session that's the first one I really remember, but I know it wasn't my first session. My first session would have been assisting the guy who took me on, and all I remember from that is him teaching me how to line up cones straight. Anyone who's watched me, I'm still pretty useless at it, but just a little bit of walk backwards as you're putting it down, you can see where they're going. That's all I remember from that first session, really. But just that tiny little bit, I was like, "Ooh, hadn't thought about that."
Yeah, that's a good point. I mean, some of your early roles included multi-sports coaching and PPA cover. How important has that been as part of your development as a coach then?
That's been massive. I probably early on, the first 5-6 years, everything was trial and error, and those roles gave me opportunity to coach and have those environments to try things and fail. The multi-sport part of it was great because you could see what related in football to other sports, and try that out, and also go, okay, well, actually, this doesn't relate. Like if I do this in football, it doesn't work, or if I take this from football into basketball, maybe that doesn't work. And it gave me that opportunity to do that, and it also gave me a steady income to go and pursue the qualifications for my B license. I was able to volunteer in non-league and at clubs because I had that job coaching. So I had that income, and that gave me the opportunity to volunteer on the side.
You mentioned obviously going into non-league there, and you were assistant manager with Rothwell Corinthians, if that's right.
Yep.
Where obviously you conducted scouting reports and other bits and bobs around the club. Was this something that maybe at that age you identified you needed to experience, or was it just to make yourself more employable later on in the coaching pathway?
Yeah, it was definitely, it was a thought out process. I wanted to work in men's football, so I wanted to do that. I knew to do my B license, I needed to work with older players consistently and in an environment where I could do phases of play and get the time on the grass doing what it would take to pass the course. So I went and found that environment. Luckily, Ben Watts gave me that opportunity to go and do that, and gave me plenty of guidance and opportunity to do that there. And I'd recommend it to anyone who's looking to progress in football. Just have that first goal and then go backwards and think, okay, well, that's where I want to be. I want to pass my B license. Okay, what do I need? I need to be working with older players. I need to constantly have around 16 to 20 players there. How do I get that environment? And then go and find it. And it might be you have to make it. You might have to create a team. You might have to go and ask and volunteer. You might have to start off by doing balls, bibs and cones, picking up and placing down cones. It's finding what fits, and then it's the hard work starts then.
Yeah, I mean, just on that one, how old were you when you went in as assistant manager there?
I'd have been early 20s. I'd 22, 23, maybe younger. I'm not 100% sure, but yeah, I was a baby. I was early on. I was still a lot of, even now there's trial and error, but I was still very much learning how I thought the game should be played, how I wanted to develop my side. So yeah, it was a tough environment, but a good environment at the same time.
Yeah, massively. You mentioned obviously the learning for the B license, and something that aspiring coaches might get into. How did that feel? And I know I've seen on a recent podcast you've done recently about speaking to players who are older than you. How might you offer advice to young coaches or any coaches looking to get into that environment?
I'd say jump in the deep end for one. Listen and be smart enough. What I think I was very good at is knowing when to add something, when not to. Ben was fantastic. He'd always go to me, Ash, have you got anything to add? I could have easily gone and waffled a load of stuff and probably repeated what he did, but I had the foresight to go, I don't need to say anything today. So then when I would say something, it would have that little bit more impact. And it might just be one little nugget for the whole group, or I'd go and just talk to one individual. But I took the pressure off myself by not just going, I have to prove myself. And it made me think every single team talk, okay, what is Ben saying, who was a much more experienced coach than me at the time. And then go, okay, well, he didn't mention that. I know he likes that. And I think that we need to say this now. I'd then start adding those little bits. And it probably meant that the impact of the few words I'd say was greater. And that built my confidence. So that's what I'd say. Sometimes less is more. And put yourself in the environment and then listen.
Yeah. So obviously getting good observation and listening skills are key to that.
Big time.
Just moving forward in your career, then a full-time role working in the professional development phase with the Football CV Academy, managing teams in the Football Conference Youth Alliance. What challenges did you face then as a coach working in the professional development phase?
The challenges there really were, there was probably the amount of players and not having my own group. So I was kind of in that role. I started off by working with maybe 5 or 6 players who needed extra work. So it was not working towards a game. It was, okay, how do we develop these guys so that they can go into the main group and then be involved in more of the games? On a match day, yes, I'd be involved in the games with Samo, but most of the time it was me working with these guys to get them better and get them at that level. So that was quite difficult because it's so much easier having your own group, having your own ideas, and a game at the end of it that you want to work towards. And we did slowly build that program. So it went from 5 players that I was working with, it built up to I eventually had a group. And then the aim was they had their own games, and it was to push them again into that first team. It was the better group, and development that way.
So then roles with Wellingborough Town back in the adult game, open age game, and also under 16s with Russian and Diamonds. Obviously juggling those 2 roles, was there much differentiation in your planning and then obviously execution of your sessions and therefore match days? Was there a different focus?
100%. Diamonds was a great environment, and they played in the JPL. It's obviously taken very seriously in that league, and the thing that we found difficult at first was the 50% of minutes, making sure everyone got at least 50% minutes. In the adult game, you're not thinking about making substitutions early on in the game. You're thinking, well, how are we going to win the game? So that was a completely new thing, going in with a team and having that. Although I'd worked with younger age groups and kids in school, that was mainly in school. You've not got games, you're not having to worry about that side of the development. So that was completely different. In terms of training, I'd say it was very similar. Both ways were to develop players. It was just that game day, taking the focus off winning, thinking about minutes. And that stuck with me even now. Even now in the games we've got at the moment, yes, when the league starts, we're thinking about winning. Right now, I'm thinking about I need, in a short period of time, to get equal minutes across people, or people who need the extra fitness, those minutes, so that we're ready. We're ready when the league starts.
Yeah, and I suppose that was good for your development as a coach then, having ultimately both ends of the spectrum in the 11v11 game, development and winning.
Definitely. It's one of those things that stuck with me. Like I said, there's loads of little bits on your journey, and you mentioned like reflecting and the listening and observation skills. If you observe yourself and you reflect, you can go, okay, well, actually, that's a great thing. Like the 50% minutes rule, we then added that into to Brookhouse eventually, and we really tracked their minutes, and we're making sure that every player was getting comfortable minutes to develop. Not everyone was getting the same minutes, but everyone was getting enough minutes to help progress them, help develop them. And that's again something that stuck with me. And it's seeing that and keeping it rather than seeing it and forgetting about it in a year or two.
Yeah. And you mentioned Brookhouse College there. 2014, you had a full-time role working as an academy coach there, and then later becoming academy assistant manager. Just talk to us around your experience there, the 5 years you had, and sort of what you had to do to progress through and ultimately become the assistant manager of the academy.
Yeah. For those who don't know Brookhouse College, it's an international school with a full-time football academy as part of that. So people come from all around the world to do their schooling, and they'll also train every day with the coaches. I started off as my role was development squad coach. So I was working with the players that technically or physically or tactically were on the lower end of the spectrum, but it wasn't just technically. We had it was open age, so there was some younger guys with some older guys, and then I progressed from that. Started working with the under 16s, and then worked my way up over time. I would say the assistant manager role, partly because I'd been there for quite a lot of time and had seen a change where we went from, when I first went there, we had 3 teams when I left, and now they're 8, 9, 10 teams. I was through that progression, so I'd seen it all, and were able to combine the old way with how it was going with the new way, and making sure that we kept how we wanted to play the same, how we develop players similar, while still progressing and pushing everything on. I'd say that was the key to me probably getting that role.
So for some, we may look at Brookhouse as a college and think, how is that similar to academy? How did that work? What leagues did you play in? You know, exposure to game time and training?
Yeah. The program, we'd play in the ECFA. So the under 19s would play in the ECFA, depending on what year we're talking about. Sometimes we're in Cat 1, but right now they've got teams in Cat 1, Cat 2, Cat 3, in the under 19s. So Cat 1 is the top tier in colleges, 2 is the second, 3 is the third, and then within 3 there's various leagues. So there was 2 teams in 3, and then as it progressed, so the last 2 years we had an under 16 team, and added a under 14 team, and that's, again, it's expanded again. Now there's an under 14, 15, 16, and an extra 16. So in terms of players, it's massive. Standard wise, I was fortunate enough to work with 2 Nigeria under 20s, a Hong Kong under 19 player, lots of players that have gone on to play in the professional game in Europe, some in the UK. So the standard of player was very high. What took us a little bit of time was, like you just said, we're just a college, was to get people to understand, well, we might be a college, but our players are as good, if not better, than some academy sides. Our coaches are, I would say, very good. And I've just noticed, as I probably will always say, I refer to Brookhouse coaches and players as ours. Like it was a big part of my career so far, and it'll always be something for me that I see as I'm still a part of it, whether I'm actually involved day to day or not. I'd still see it as that. So that probably sums up the program in terms of, as a coach, how I felt that's developed me.
And what did your sort of average week look like? Obviously, working at Brookhouse, whether you're saying there as a college, those who might want to get into the college program and coaching and that, what would your average week look like?
So our average week would be, I'll do it for one team. So the group I worked with in my last year there, we'd train Monday and Tuesday. Wednesdays would be a Cat 1 game, so you'd be playing the Colleges League. Thursday, Friday, and Saturday you'd also train. So Thursday would be a recovery day, so we'd go in the gym. Those who had played 90 would do just full recovery, and if they wanted to work on some individual stuff in there, they could do that. Those that had played longer would either train in a small group on a Thursday, or they'd do a harder session in the gym. Friday would be a day on the pitch, and that would vary. And then Saturday would be an early morning session, so it would be 30 minutes in the gym and then an hour on the pitch, and that was only open to the first team at the time, and then it's progressed now. So now most groups will also train on that Saturday. So it was very full on. So many hours of coaching possible every day, but also that opportunity to reflect, do video work, and things like that. So that was how all day would work in terms of the football side of it. In terms of the other side of it, you'd be looking at the analysis. So on a Thursday, you'd also be reviewing the game with the video side of it. There'd be, in my role as assistant manager, I'd be organising the travel and also organising maybe the squads for the next week or this and that. So there was loads of additional office jobs that we did. So that would be in the morning, and then we train every afternoon.
So then moving from that, obviously the success there in 2017, you began work as a youth development phase coach at Northampton and an FA coach mentor. During that time period, 2017 to 2019, did you manage any sleep? And also, how did you manage that time and that busy schedule?
There was very little time for sleep or social life, really. There was probably, I think there was weeks on weeks where it was 7-day weeks. It was fantastic experience. I'd always wanted to work in an academy, and I was fortunate. Shane and Lee offered me a role there. Got to taste that. I still have that affinity for Cobblers. I want Northampton to do well. They've been doing fantastic, and some of the guys me and Shane worked with at 13s are now they've just been offered their the scholarships. So that's been great to see some of those guys kind of on that next step of their journey. And the coach mentoring was, again, another really, really good opportunity. I know you've got a lot of experience in there as well, to think about the game in a different way, not just watch a session and go, I do this. Watch a session and think, okay, why have you done that? Can you explain it to me? If there's method in the madness, I'm open to it. If it's you've just seen it somewhere or there's no thought behind it, I can start to probe that. And that was very beneficial to me in terms of understanding of the game, but also understanding people and trying to not just be empathetic, but also test people and push them at the same time.
Looking back on your time as a mentor, then, would you say that you had a mentor during your coaching pathway, or do you wish you'd had one assigned?
Yeah, I think how the FA, I don't know how they do it now, because obviously I'm not a part of it. a key bit that a lot of people were talking about was, like you just said, if the club decides that they're going to have mentors and you're kind of assigned a mentor, sometimes it was very difficult early on to build that relationship, and that trust in yourself with the mentee. So I think there was probably a balance needed where you got the buy-in from the mentee who really wanted that help. They were the best relationships I had were with the mentees that came and sought out the help. I've been fortunate enough to have a lot of mentors, and not just like, probably one of the people that's influenced me from the start would be John Wall, in Sweden. He was kind enough to show me around AEK when I was a level 2 20 year old. Got to go around one of the biggest clubs in Sweden. Stuck in touch, probably one of my best mates in football. Now I can ask him advice, and he'll ask my advice, which is fantastic for me. It challenges me big time. In my last 2 years with Brookhouse, I worked with Gabi Chiofi, who was a former professional player in Italy, worked with Zola at Birmingham, was Crawley head coach this last season, and part of the season before. He again was able to really show me, probably I would say more, show me what it meant to be a coach at the top level, show the level of detail and understanding, and again push me to go, okay, well, I like to do it this way, but I may need to do it that way sometimes. And then Ben Watts gave me an opportunity that I probably wasn't ready for quite early on, and let me have that environment. So there'd be the 3 key mentors, and was fortunate, I'd probably say, with a few of them just to be at the right place at the right time. But I've always put in that graft that probably earns that right to that bit of fortune.
Yeah, and that moves us on nicely to your current situation. Currently first team head coach, manager?
Head coach.
Head coach at a club in Iceland. Big step to go from, the UK and what I'd say is, a safe, challenging environment with your home comforts, to going overseas. Just how did that come about, and what made you take that leap of faith?
Yeah. A lot of people asked me, how did you get the job? It's a long story, but it was the plan. I had planned. I've wanted to work in Europe for 5-6 years. I've always wanted a role like this. This is kind of perfect, but it started off with building those connections, going and traveling and meeting people, emailing people, connecting on LinkedIn and on Twitter. And then after I'd done that for so much and applied for jobs and not got it, like you said, was in a really comfortable, cozy position at Brookhouse and in the UK, and felt like I'd never step out and do that unless I left that role. So I decided to quit my job. My girlfriend did the same thing, and we went traveling around South America with the idea of get to go and see the world. I get to go and see a different kind of part of football, but the whole idea was that this would hopefully trigger something in Europe. And I remember talking to a few people before I made that leap. I was like, this sounds crazy, but this is what I want to happen. And it may sound backwards that I'm going to South America to get a job in Europe, but I think it will add something that I can help people in Europe with. I'll build connections in South America that people in Europe may want, and they may then want to have a conversation with me. Fortunately, a guy I'd met in Iceland was also in South America. We got talking again, reconnected. He heard that this job had come up and asked if I was still interested in moving abroad. applied, and it went from there. So there was a plan. It somehow worked out. There was a few moments where in South America I'm stressed, like I finished this in March time. That was when we were going to stop traveling and go back, and I'm like, I haven't got anything lined up yet. This is crazy. I was very worried sometimes, but then thankfully it ended up paying off.
And the visit to South America and the traveling, did you get to experience coaching out there, or was it mainly just to go traveling and see different parts of the world?
Predominantly traveling. The idea was to do a bit of coaching in Costa Rica, but I didn't end up going to Costa Rica because I got offered this role, which meant that I didn't actually end up doing that. But I got to watch sessions. Was lucky enough to watch Fluminense, their first team train before a big local derby. I got to watch games, watch football on the beach. Wasn't as much as I wanted. The protests through South America kind of cut a little bit of that short in Chile and in Peru and Bolivia, but I still got a big flavour of it, and I was able to still connect to people throughout the continent.
Sounds like an amazing experience, and obviously one that I know from us speaking off air, you're really looking forward to getting your teeth into over in Iceland. Now we've gone through your career, I just want to look at like development as a coach and how we gauge that. Looking back, who would you say, or what has been the biggest influence in terms of your development? Has it been an intrinsic motivation that you wanted to go out and do it, or have you worked with others and gone, wow, I need to be at their level, or what their perceived level is?
I'd say it's the two things in parallel. So I'd say intrinsically, I wouldn't want to get into anything without trying to be the best, and that's just an intrinsic thing for me. And when I first started off, I'd have daydreams of working in different jobs and go, oh, what if I did this instead, because I felt like it wasn't quite working? And then I'd be like, well, I'd want to be the best. I wouldn't do that on the side, because I'd want to be the best at it, which would take it away from my coaching. So that intrinsic motivation to improve. And then I started setting goals from an early age, and some people may say that you can look to go through the qualifications too quickly, or this or that. I set myself goals, and I look to get the experience to tick those off. And that all came from within. Parallel to that, I've always pushed myself to find those people like John. When I went and visited him for a second time, felt like I was starting to understand football. He showed me one thing on his computer, and it just blew my mind. And I was like, oh, I thought I was starting to get it. And that was very kind of humbling. He didn't put me in my place, but I saw that, and I was like, I'm way off it. And the same when I worked with Gabby. But it's finding those people and having those conversations. It doesn't need to be that you work directly with them. It could be a message on Twitter. It could be listening to a podcast. It could be things like that, going and seeing that, and then going, yeah, I need a bit of that. I've always wanted to be that combination of new school and old school. So I've always looked at things from, okay, why did he do that? Sam Allardyce, for example, has probably a bad rep, I would say, on how he likes to play, but he had a way of playing. I personally think he had a very, very sought out plan, and that's what he wanted his teams to do. And you could see that, rightly or wrongly, whether you agree with that. I wouldn't want to play that way, but you knew how he wanted to play, and that's the way I look at it. Okay, what could I take from him? Mm-hmm. He was probably a pioneer at some time. He was getting the players to cool down on the bike straight after games, or warming up on the bikes. Whether or not scientifically now it mattered. He was kind of testing the water, whereas some people might go, he was rubbish. Like, I wouldn't learn anything from Sam Allardyce. Or you can go the other way and go, Pep Guardiola is the best thing in the world. I don't want to be like anyone else. If someone said to me Pep or Mourinho, I'd go, I don't have a loyalty. I don't have like an unrational, well, I want to play like Pep, so I hate Mourinho. It's not sitting on the fence. It's taking bits of both and being able to take bits of both.
And as you say, in context to with what you're working with, you know, and I've
Yeah,
had this discussion a few times with other coaches and guests we've had, is that, you know, you might want to play like Pep, but you might not have the funds or, you know, anything else to go and recruit that type of player. So you might have to use a bit of Allardyce's methodologies, or a Tony Pulis, or, you know, managers like Sean Dyche who've got the best out of the players by knowing what they've got. Would you say, for you to learn from that, you put yourself in a lot of sort of vast experiences working across the different age groups, different levels of the game? Has that set you up nicely for your next challenge? And was it part of your plan?
Very good question. 100%. That's how I believe people develop through environments. Like, I think environment is a massive part of it. Yes, there must be some science in DNA, but if you put yourself in an environment that tests you in a very specific way, you're going to get better at that. And I think going and testing and going into different places for an extended period of time has definitely helped me. And yeah, I would say 100% a part of my plan. Everything I did had a reason. When I went into mentoring, it was to get better at understanding what other people were doing and breaking down not just their training session, like, okay, have you had a thought about this? And then starting to do that myself. Working with Northampton was to go, okay, let's see academy football. Let's see if I'm good at it. Let's see what's different about it. And so, yeah, it's definitely was a part of the plan. And now it's structured how I think football should be played, or how I think a club could be ran, or how I would like a club and a team to run. Again, it's something that I'm ever evolving and constantly developing. But advice on how to do that: go and start writing things down. Okay, what do I want my defenders to do? What do I want to do when we're playing out? You don't have to publish it. You don't have to put it anywhere. Start writing it down. Start thinking about it. And then when you get that team that you want, you'll see if you do that, or if you actually do something completely different and go, well, maybe I just thought I wanted to do that. I'd rather do this instead. A lot of people on Twitter, I think Twitter's a fantastic platform, but I'd have people saying, oh, can you send me some information on how to play with a 4-3-3? Mm-hmm. And I'm like, I'll have a conversation with you on how you want to play 4-3-3, but there's no point me sending you what I think, because mine depends on the players I've got or what I would like to happen. And I think too many people want that blueprint rather than that conversation and the help designing it. And you don't need the help. You can just start it yourself. Start asking yourself the question. And yeah, I think that'd be a good start for anyone on Twitter. If they want to progress, start now, write down what you think. You'll revisit it so many times. Today I did a presentation with the group on playing out. It's probably the 5th time since I've been here at this club I've revisited it myself and tweaked it. They've only seen it, this would be the 2nd time some of them have seen it, but I've probably tweaked it 5 times, just where I've in games or in training or you're watching games, I've gone, okay, that needs to be different. And if you start, you can then continue to change it.
That leads me on nicely to sort of the next question of just how important for your development as a coach is it to reflect and review?
Massive. I think it's one of the best things, like the FA did, the plan, do, review, starting to get the coaches to do that. I definitely don't do any of those things in the traditional manner. I wouldn't say I'll plan everything completely to the T. If someone asks me for a session plan, it's going to be on a piece of paper. It's probably got scribbles all over it. Probably doesn't make any sense, but it's the framework that then I'll then coach in. And it's the same with the review. I'm reviewing in the middle of the session, walking home, driving, in bed. It's never I'm not sitting down and going, okay, I'm going to write about it, but I'm reflecting and thinking about it. And then the next day when I'm planning my session, I'm revisiting that and going, okay, does that change it? For example, Saturday's game, we struggled with playing out, which is why we've been re-looking at it. And I asked myself, well, did the players know that that's what I wanted to do? No, they don't know because I haven't told them. So I reflected on that after the game, thought about it, thought how to explain it to them in a way that would be hopefully simple and concise, and then added that into training and got some video clips to kind of support my views. Doesn't mean I'm right, but it's what I want us to try and do, and it hopefully gets us an edge.
Would you say there's been a wow moment in your coaching career to date, or has there been a learning curve as you develop where you've gone, right, I need to do this, this, and this to get to A, B, and C, or has it just been continuous?
It's been quite continuous, but one wow moment was on the A license, we got to watch England under 21s training. The assistant manager of England now, his name is on the tip of my tongue. Anyway, they're taking a session.
Stevie Holland.
Yeah, Stevie Holland, thanks. So Stevie Holland's taking a session. It's on, it's very simple. Stops and makes a comment, and it's, okay, if there's pressure on the ball, you can step. If there's no pressure, drop, play. That was it. That was all he said. And I think I'd been planning on a session that was very similar, like when to step, when to drop. There's about 4. And I'm thinking about all the specific details. And yeah, he's working with players who know it. But it was that's how quick and simple and concise it just needs to be. You don't need to show them right there and then why. You can explain that over time. But that was like a wow moment when I was like, that would have taken me far too long, and he did it in 4 words.
Yeah. Wow. And again, I suppose the real coaching comes within your detail, and I suppose at those levels of the game, that detail can be shown in more depth. But when you have limited time with the players, that might be the gem that gets you that result or that development. And you know, as coaches, we do have a heavy focus on developing players and exposing them to a wide range of situations and scenarios. Would you say that we need to do more of the same as coaches, i.e. get out your comfort zone and, you know, if you work with the 12s or 13s, go and coach the 7s and 8s where it's high energy, hectic, concentration levels are low?
Yeah, 100%. Work with as many different age groups as you can. I worked in America for 6 months, and one of the groups we had was called the Munchkins, and it was literally under 4s. Whether or not you think they should play, it was just for them to have fun and start learning or falling in love with the ball. And that was just absolute carnage. And today I've just worked with the 5s and 6s and the 6s and 7s. It splits a little bit differently here. And completely out of my comfort zone. It's freezing cold today. My Icelandic is very low to nothing. And with such young kids, their English is better than my Icelandic, but still so. To get them engaged and loving football, which is what it should be about at that age, was difficult. But I enjoy it because it helps me with my Icelandic. It forces me to go and actually think, okay, do I know how to say this? Because I'm going to need it. Because if they're not listening, they need telling in Icelandic. If I say listen, it won't go in the same way. So yeah, and just challenging yourself it doesn't have to be that complex. It doesn't have to be going and traveling to South America to push yourself. It could just be a little bit like early on, going and trying to coach in men's football, going and trying to coach little kids, going and trying to coach teenagers in a school, out of a school. All these little things you start to pick up things that is either going to help you with behavior. Half the stuff I learned in schools it comes in handy as soon as I have to do a session with kids, because there's so many little things teachers have that gets everyone's attention that you can use no matter what. And it works in Icelandic, it works in English, it works anywhere, it transfers. So everyone's just got to go and test themselves as much as possible, in my opinion, and with a thought on why, and that reflection on, okay, what am I getting out of this? It doesn't have to be at the time. It might be afterwards, after I finished mentoring. That's when I probably realized how big an impact it had on me. So yeah.
So if you were sat in front of a 16, 18-year-old Ash now, or any other young coaches who were listening and maybe not getting that break that they want or need, what advice would you give to them?
Be patient is first. I was in that position, and you feel like people are lucky. You feel like people are lucky because they're getting these opportunities. A lot of people will think that I'm lucky in the position I'm in. I'm fortunate, but I've got 12 years of experience that backs up and that's had to be put in to get me to this position. And it's cliche, but you don't see that. You just see the tip of the iceberg. You don't see everything underneath. And start with a small ask, get in touch with someone, ask them if you can talk to them. It's so much easier now than when I started. I started by emailing hundreds of every club in Sweden, in Belgium. I ended up going to AEK, Malmo, Mechelen, and Anderlecht. So 4 top league teams, just by asking, and start with a small ask. And what I've learned now is, can you help someone? Do you know someone that person might want to know? Do you have a player that maybe might help that person? It can be the smallest thing that just starts the conversation. You build that trust, and then you can maybe have a bigger ask. I got this role because I met up with a coach in Iceland. Didn't ask him for anything, just asked him for a little bit of time to talk about football. Most people want to talk about football. It's that easy. And then 4 years later or less, I'm now in Iceland.
No, good advice there. I mean, before we go on to our not so quick fire question round, what does the future hold for you now, Ash?
Well, I like to plan. It's difficult when I've not got that idea in my head. Ideally, we have a good season this year, and potentially progress with the team or elsewhere. I want to continue traveling in the off season here. We're already planning on where we're going to go in the world and see everything being okay and everything being open, and testing myself in at what level I can get to. I'm not too specific on the goals. I'm not going to go, I want to be a Premier League manager. I'm not going to say I want to manage England, but I just want to see how far I can push and progress. And at the moment, it's got to me to a position that if I did this and worked at this level for the rest of my life, I wouldn't be unhappy about it. It's enjoyable, but if I can go and push and be higher, fantastic.
And who knows, Ash, for how dedicated and hardworking you are, mate, who says you can't be the next Graham Potter?
Yeah, I mean, that would be the dream. And Graham obviously is one of the people that early on took that different route, and it's paid dividends. And hopefully similar happens with Ian Ostersund at the moment, and all the other guys that are currently coaching abroad or even coaching in the UK at whatever level.
Great stuff. So, quick fire question round. Chance to put you on the spot and probably make you feel a little bit uncomfortable. Best moment in football to date?
Probably, just sticking in my head right now, I think it's getting that email to say I'd got on my A license. It was a huge milestone for me. It was something that I knew I needed to get if I wanted to keep progressing, and I knew that it would push me and test me. And the first couple of blocks really did that. So that'd probably be that moment that stuck in me. I was like, oh my God, I'm in.
Yeah, I can relate to that. I've recently just got that, and to be on that and knowing that that's the next level, it's massive. You mentioned a few names before, but best friend in football?
It's a tough one. In terms of actual friendships, instead of maybe not like too much the football side of it, the guys that I work with in the office at Brookhouse, Adam, Niall, Faz, they're probably up there in terms of the closest kind of where we were good mates. And then I'd probably say John, Ben, Gabby, in terms of that more football side of it, where it's mainly there. Those guys massively.
Toughest opponent as a coach?
Toughest opponent. I'll take a second on this one. I'd probably say maybe not toughest opponent, but toughest loss. We lost to Millfield in the ISFA Cup. That was a tough one for me and a bit of an eye opener. Thought we were going to do very well, and it was just a very, very tough away day, to say the least.
Okay, best trainer. So in terms of player you've coached, who's been the
thought you meant shoe then. I was like, don't want to be giving any fashion advice out. Best trainer, probably a guy we've just signed from England that I've worked with before, Ben King. He's one of the hardest workers I've seen. Definitely him.
Biggest role model or influence in football?
I'm repeating myself a lot here. Role model, I'd probably say a little bit of Graham Potter and Ian Birchnell. They've gone there and both done it and built themselves up from a similar level that I am now, and progressed into top tier teams in Europe, and obviously Graham's now back in England. So there'd be two people I very much aspire to hopefully go on a similar path if I'm fortunate enough to keep progressing.
Best player you've coached?
This is a tough one. It's between two. I had two fantastic players last season, Success Makanjuala, who's currently playing in Spain, and Emmanuel Doku, who, if things were different, he'd definitely be playing at a very good level. And hopefully after this, after everything clears up, he'll be playing professionally somewhere in Europe. They're the two best, very different players. That's why I can't really narrow it down between them, but the quality they had was ridiculous.
This is one that's stumped quite a few people. Describe yourself in 3 words.
3 words. This is where it's not so quick. I'd say caring. Actually, there's the 3 words. Cares too much. It's a great thing, but also it can be a curse.
I like that. Is there anyone you would recommend or like to hear on the podcast?
I think Gabby is someone that I could listen to speak all day. I think he needs to talk a little bit more to people, because he's got some fantastic views on the game, on how the game should be played, and experiences playing and also managing in England. He'd be a great one. And similarly, John, he's author of Rotations and Interchanges, inspired by Bielsa. He's a very, very intelligent man. Challenges me whenever I have a conversation with him, to try and be up to that level. So they're 2 fantastic people.
Fantastic. They're noted down, and we may lean on you for contact.
I'll see what I can do.
Ash, look, as always, mate, it's been an absolute pleasure to speak with you. Thank you ever so much for taking time. And I know you just come straight off the training pitch to speak to us. So we really appreciate that. And it's been great to speak all things sort of coach development and football. I know your season's getting underway as such, slowly but surely. So we want to wish you all the success over in Iceland. Stay safe, and we look forward to speaking again soon.
Cheers, appreciate it, and thanks for having me on.
No, top man, it's been a pleasure. Speak soon, bud.
Cheers, speak soon.
Ductig brand is on hand for all of your coaching needs. Whether it be to plan sessions or take notes whilst observing games, Ductig are able to cover all of your needs. Use the discount code Irvine20 at checkout to receive a discount. Thank you for listening. We hope you enjoy the content that we're trying to bring to you. Don't forget, new episodes will be released every Monday. You can find us on the iTunes Store, Spotify, and if you want to see the video, you can see it on our YouTube channel, PCT Football Coaching.